I'm Kaylee. I'm a social worker in adult services. I currently work in a hospital team, but I have experience in various areas as well. So in this video, I'm going to be going through a case study, and the details are made up, but it's very relevant to situations that we deal with day to day. Mr. A has been referred to the hospital team for discharge planning. The ward strongly advised against him returning home, stating concerns about his capacity to make decisions, past alcohol misuse, self-neglect and intermittent confusion. Additionally, his home environment poses hazards, particularly due to his history of falls. So prior to going to speak to him, I will be gathering as much information as I can. I'd be really clarifying some of those things around his medical issues. So are these permanent issues around his cognitive impairment, or are they reversible? Because I'm going to have to do a capacity assessment based on the concerns noted and the signs of cognitive impairment he's showing, I'd be first ruling out whether he has any a urine infection or whether he's been tested for anything like that, because we shouldn't be going ahead with those assessments unless that's been ruled out, or any infection. So really making sure that he's medically well. In terms of going to ask him questions to do the assessment and the mental capacity assessment side, I would first be trying to establish his functional level of ability at the moment. So is he able to wash and dress himself, walk around okay, what can he and can't he do? These details are very important, because when you're actually going and assessing someone, you need to be ready to ask these questions in the most simple way. You don't want to be unsure yourself about whether what the person's saying is accurate or not accurate. And you can go ahead and check afterwards, but if you are doing a capacity assessment, you need to be checking the person's understanding and using language that is as simple as possible, straightforward, so that you're giving the person the best possible chance to make decisions for themselves and to display understanding. And you can only do that by not confusing them and going off on tangents yourself. The other reason that you need to know as much information as possible as part of your preparation is making sure that you're sticking to the relevant points and the relevant factors to do with the decision to be made. So if we're looking at someone who needs a package of care, or we're looking at other options, we need to know what their options potentially are based on what their abilities are, and sort of have that in our minds. But that's not to say that you can't have an initial conversation with the person and then come back and find out more and then refine your questions a second time. In a hospital setting though, it's often very fast paced, so you don't have as much time to do these assessments, so the more information you have up front the better. In this case, we mentioned something about self-neglect, so hopefully you've got a little bit of information around what that actually entails for that individual. So for this gentleman, maybe family have already passed on to the ward about whether they're self-neglecting with their personal care, like the washing and the dressing side of things, whether it was with the nutrition, and then if it is something to do with nutrition, like finding out how they're eating at the moment, has that improved? Have they gained any weight, or is that a significant concern? And then those are things that you can really ask the person about, and to sort of delve into their understanding of those factors. I think something that comes up a lot is that maybe someone's got issues with falling, and this is something that quite often is used as a reason why people can't return to their own home. And there are ways of managing these sorts of risks. There's lots of technology that can be used to help someone get support in an emergency, or to manage those risks in the home environment. And maybe family haven't been told that information yet, and sometimes that can be why it's difficult when they've spoken to other professionals, and maybe family then feel that this isn't an option for that individual. And really it's up to us to speak to the person and gain insight into what they want, what their level of understanding is, and the situation at hand, whilst taking into account all of the concerns and the information you have from everyone else. So in this scenario, we said that there was issues with stairs leading up to the property, so we need to establish how many stairs, are they concrete stairs, what are the risks, how are they managing this before, because if this has been a long-standing concern but the person was managing, like how did they manage and is that suitable? And things like this usually fall more onto the therapist to tell us. So you may work in a hospital setting where a therapist would go and assess a home environment. Where I work, that's now done on the day of discharge by a team, but we may be able to get assessments done in the hospital setting on some steps and to find out how many the person is able to do. Or there may be the option of further assessments in some sort of rehabilitation setting, so that's something that can help promote independence as well. The only thing is, sometimes with people who may be experiencing cognitive impairment, the longer they're away from their own home, the harder it can be to actually return to that environment. So it's always a balancing act between these things, and sometimes the best thing is to just get back home and just see how they manage, and sometimes that's just not possible at this time due to factors that may be arising. Every situation is different. We need to take it on a case-by-case basis. In terms of the alcohol misuse, it's about finding out whether the person's aware that they were drinking alcohol and that others found that to be excessive, like what's their understanding or views around this. What you're really determining as well is whether that was just personal choice and that's something they've always done or done for a long time. Or whether it's something that is bothering them and they may need support with, that's fine. We can look at options to address that. And sometimes it can be more significant and it may be causing medical issues. So sometimes people can have Korsakoff's dementia due to alcohol consumption. That's something that I often come across with people I'm working with, where they may have Korsakoff's and that's impacting sort of their memory and things, but actually it's reversible, but there could be risks around that. So it's about how that would be managed. Something that I consider is case law as well, that can help you to guide you in these sort of situations where there's a lot of ethical dilemmas. So sometimes I find myself in situations where capacity is being assessed, and that's fine. The Capacity Act is there to safeguard people's rights to make decisions and also safeguard their rights to have decisions made for them when they're unable, in line with the legal framework around it, to make sure that we're actually taking into account the principles that are important to make sure that we are making decisions in the person's best interest and taking on board their current and past wishes and everything like that. So sometimes this is misused by professionals, so people may assume actually if the person lacks capacity we can just force them into a decision, and it's just not in line with what the Act says at all, what the principles guide us towards. And sometimes you need to consider whether this is actually a capacity issue someone's raising with you or whether it's a safeguarding issue. So what I mean by this is that actually what may be raised as a concern, so if the person returns home, like their risk of falls, their self-neglect, all of these things may actually constitute more of a Section 42, and it may be getting mixed up here between that and capacity, and we need to be very clear, and I think that that's useful. And there's something, a piece of case law by Wyre Valley NHS Trust versus Mr. B, that's a case that I think is useful, and I like where it says that in that piece that a lack of capacity is not an off switch for someone's human rights, and I think that that's really important to take forward in your practice, because often it's used in that way and it shouldn't be, and it's just about really, as a social worker, making sure that people's rights are being upheld. We need to work effectively with other professionals, but we also have to make sure we're being measured and sensitive in our approach, least restrictive. Sometimes safeguarding concerns come up, but then sometimes things may not constitute a Section 42, but it's useful to have an understanding of different areas of the law so that you know when to use it and when you don't need to. So I hope this video has been helpful. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let me know in the comments section any further topics you'd like me to cover.